If you can't decide between the new Nexus and the new iPad, you're probably hung up on one of two factors: ecosystem or price. Nothing we say here will change the fact that the Nexus 9 is about $100 cheaper, and if you're already invested in Apple's or Android's walled garden, the decision is already made based on which smartphone you're carrying. Again, probably. But if you're thinking about jumping platforms, or if this will be your first tablet, there are a few differences worth discussing. I'm Michael Fisher, this is Pocketnow, and this is iPad Air 2 versus Nexus 9. Here goes nothing. If you're buying based on build, well, there's no comparison here. Get the iPad. As we said in our full Nexus 9 review, HTC makes beautiful smartphones. But with tablets, well, when Google's calling the shots, the output is merely adequate. The Nexus 9's soft-touch coated plastic is more durable, and you'll feel less guilty about beating it up, but it shows smudges more easily, and the black version has a lot of give to it. From button travel to fit and finish, there's none of the attention to detail that makes the thinner, sleeker iPad Air 2 such a pleasure to use. The iPad's screen is not quite as sharp, but it is larger. And while they're both IPS panels, the iPad's anti-reflective coating makes it easier to read in bright light. While the Nexus 9 can be awakened with a handy double tap, the iPad packs a fingerprint sensor built into its home key that lets you unlock just as easily and adds a different flavor of security in the process. The Nexus 9 does score some points here. It bears repeating that it's more comfortable to use, in the sense that it's slightly smaller and you don't worry as much about tossing it around. Other advantages, like HTC's signature front-firing speakers, do give it more traction, and its Tegra processor is more powerful in some tests than the iPad's A8X. But Android specs always outshine Apple's, and it seldom makes a difference in real-world performance. Plus, the iPad's speakers, though side-firing, can actually hold their own here. We prefer HTC's placement and added bass, yes. The Nexus 9 wins this one, no question, but the difference doesn't make for a deal-breaker. In the tablet world, hardware is less than half the story. Android Lollipop is version 5 of Google's mobile platform, while iOS is Apple's 8th revision. What we're trying to say is they're both very refined. If you're already an iPhone owner, you'll be much more at home with the iPad, and ditto in reverse. Obvious comparison is obvious. In some ways, the Nexus 9 gets to make up ground against the iPad here. As always, Android is more adaptable than iOS because of things like home screen widgets and a robust sharing framework. You can move into it a little more fully. And Lollipop adds flair to that utility with so many of the little cosmetic touches that Android ignored for years. All that attention to detail the Nexus 9 hardware lacks? Well, it's a Nexus, so Google has built it into the software instead. Want to know the weather or your appointments for the day? Ask the Nexus 9 without even touching it.
Okay, Google, what's on my agenda for today?
You have a calendar entry today at 7:30 p.m. The title is Real Thing.
Yeah, the iPad can do that too, but only if it's plugged in. And Siri's not as smart as Google Now.
What's the distance to the Cross Sound ferry terminal in New London?
The drive from your location to Cross Sound Ferry Services Inc. is 111.6 miles.
Google Now itself is also a great mix of relevant information and borderline creepy predictive powers, and Android's multiple user support means sharing the Nexus 9 with a friend or family member is much more customizable than it is on the iPad. And if you don't like how Android looks on the Nexus 9, you can use a variety of solutions to change it. Again, that's one of the big strengths of Android. Where the iPad shines brighter is in some new areas like continuity, which lets you carry communications like phone calls and texts across phone, tablet, and desktop, and that classic ecosystem advantage of Apple's apps. The App Store might be a pain to navigate with its constant password challenges, and both the App Store and the Play Store feature millions of titles, but Apple's market still packs more tablet-optimized titles than the Google Play Store does. It's not just optimization that keeps Apple on top in the performance category. The company's top-down control of the whole stack means that games, for example, have to work on the new iPad to be listed in the App Store. On the other side, the Nexus 9's Tegra K1 processor is non-standard for Android devices, and that means that it's not at all guaranteed to run every app you ask it to. This is the price Android pays for having a more diverse hardware ecosystem, and look, it's worth it. We love having the choice that the Android world provides. But that'll come as little comfort when all you want to do is play a particular game on your Nexus 9 and you can't because of your powerful, but in this case, impotent processor. Also, if you're a real game or media hound, watch out. You can only download up to a 32 gig ceiling on the Nexus. Meanwhile, the iPad offers storage options all the way up to 64 and 128 gigs, which helps ease the sting of an iCloud pricing plan stuck in the Stone Age. If you take photos with your tablet, well, good for you. It's always nice to meet someone who doesn't care what other people think of them. Anyway, you're not going to come away terribly impressed by the output of either, but the iPad bears a slight edge in quality. The Nexus 9 brings an LED flash to the table, though, so if you're taking tablet photos in the club or the coal mine, well, that's your ticket. Finally, how about battery life? Well, iOS doesn't break down usage in quite the same way Android does, but it doesn't matter. Endurance on each of these is right in keeping with what you'd expect of a full-size tablet in 2014. And unlike in the smartphone world, that's good news. Expect to get 2 to 3 days of moderate to heavy use out of these Wi-Fi-only devices, with each promising about 10 hours of continuous movie watching, web browsing, or other mixed usage. It's always the same, isn't it? Choose your ecosystem, then choose your hardware. And as close as these tablet platforms have gotten to feature parity, fundamentally you're still looking at the same choice. A locked down but consistent experience versus a more open but less consistent one. If you're talking about platforms, there are a ton of reasons to choose Android over iOS, but this is a comparison specific to 2 particular tablets. And given the substantial gulf in the hardware quality and general polish here, it's tough to recommend the Nexus 9 over the iPad Air 2, even given the $100 price difference. If you're really strapped for cash, or you really prefer Android, of course, go for the Google tablet. But for now, we think the iPad Air 2 is money better spent. There's more to learn about each of these tablets, folks, so for our full reviews, check out the links in the description below. Be sure to give us a thumbs up and do subscribe if you enjoyed this comparison. Until next time, this has been Michael Fisher with Pocketnow, Captain Two Phones on Twitter, inviting your comment, your civilized comment, down below. We'll see you next time.